Delhi, 7:30 in the morning, and the elite of Indian teenagers arrive for school. The Indian economy is one of the fastest growing in the world. A key driver of that growth is education. Yet almost half of all children abandon formal schooling by the age of 11. A third of India's 1.2 billion population are illiterate. The government's aiming for 100% literacy by 2020 and wants every child to attend and stay on at school. India has always been educationally and socially divided. The haves pay for their children to be privately educated. Private schools like Bluebells in Delhi cater for around a third of the school population. They are still strongly influenced by the English, 60 years after British rule ended.
Gaining motivation from the Indian sepoys, the Indian peasants...
These students are taught all their lessons in English, unlike their counterparts in the state system.
More people who sided the British...
This revision lesson's looking at a key moment in Anglo-Indian history, the 1857 rebellion against British rule. But was it a mutiny or the start of the freedom struggle?
We are now going to be talking about two perspectives. One, which talks of it being a sepoy mutiny, and one which is talking of it being a first war of independence.
I believe it was the first war of independence because we can see that the Hindu and Muslim fought together like shoulder to shoulder. Then it was like almost half of the country was fighting against the British. So it is true that it started with the sepoys mutiny, but rather than it created awareness of all the people, it was a nationalism that was there. So I think it is the first war of independence.
Okay, so Swarnima's group talks of the feeling of nationalism being brought about through the revolt. Many sections of the society participated, so it couldn't be just a sepoy mutiny or just a peasant revolt. It had to be a wider scope.
I would like to say, ma'am, I'm not with Swarnima. She said that it was the first war of independence. The most important is, ma'am, they did not get their aim. Ma'am, they were lacking of aim, and ma'am, no one was one. Ma'am, they were fighting for their own reasons and reasons also, ma'am.
Ma'am, also, ma'am, if it was a war of independence, why it was suppressed so easily? And then also some societies of the Indian did not participate like the Brahmins and all. So, ma'am, if it was war of independence, why not all societies came in together, and why we did not achieve the main objective of the independence or the revolt?
Right. Yes, it did get suppressed within a year. Yes, there was disunity. Yes, there was, let's say, an aimless fight, as Sudhanshu pointed out. There were also lots of people, lots of leaders who were in it because of their own personal reasons. But there were people beyond one class, beyond one section. Okay? So I'm again not reaching any conclusions yet. Let's take it further.
Ma'am, we cannot say that it is the first war of independence because, ma'am, there was no feeling of nationalism in the Indians. Because, ma'am, all people were just fighting for their kingdoms. Ma'am, there was nothing known to be a complete India there.
Okay. Anyone else to contribute, to contradict?
Ma'am, we are Indians, so ma'am, we obviously will think that it was the first war of independence because it was on a big perspective. But ma'am, if we see it from a British point of view, it did not hurt them or make any changes. It was just that the East India Company was...
Wasn't that a big move in itself, that the East India Company now was no more to rule India as it was? And it was sidelined, and it was going
a bad name to the crown.
The fact that the crown had to step in and take over charge meant that the British were in somehow feeling threatened by the Indian community.
Ma'am, but ma'am, it just profited them.
Bluebell sixth formers are discussing partition. the division in 1947 of the British territory into the separate states of India and Pakistan.
This is what the map looks like now? Yeah? This, of course, is now free and it's a separate country, but this is what East Pakistan was. This is West Pakistan. Right? So that is the Cyril-Radcliffe boundary. What do you think was finally the role that the British played in dividing the country, in partition? Were they solely responsible? Were there other factors? What really was it?
There, ma'am.
They were?
See, when they were in our country, they somehow looted our country. They took away our riches. They exploited us.
Okay.
And before leaving, they created such a blunder in our country so that till date, we fight between Hindu and Muslims.
Yeah.
So at the back of our heads, we do have those grudges for the British.
But I disagree a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's not that the Britishers kind of ignited what we already had. The Hindu-Muslim rivalry was always there to start with. But the Britishers kind of took the opportunity. I mean, they saw that we can use this for our own good and they took the opportunity. But it is not that they are the sole reason. The Hindus and Muslims are responsible. The Indians, not Hindus and Muslims, the Indians are responsible for the partition as much as the Britishers are responsible. Because if they did not want to part, then they could have stopped it perhaps. Because
Ma'am, I agree with Mahashweta because the Britishers aren't solely responsible for all this. They aggravated and entrenched social, problems between Hindus and Muslims were prevalent before also.
Give me examples of that.
During the rule of Akbar.
Yeah.
When Akbar ruled, even then there were fights between the Rajputs and the Mughals. So
But was it a religious fight?
It wasn't, but it was for political power. Even during independence, the Muslim League was formed for political power. Jinnah wanted more political power and hence he wanted that Pakistan should be created so that he gets more political power.
Since independence, the teaching of Indian history, like the country, has been through turbulent times. Not surprisingly, the British left behind a curriculum that portrayed their own role sympathetically.
See, there was a time when British rule was seen in celebratory terms. Now, you saw the establishment of law and order, peace, construction of roadways, railways, industrialization, agricultural growth, coming of democracy, which culminates education, coming of democracy, which culminates in nationalism and the making of the nation state. This is broadly, very schematically, what we refer to as the imperial view.
And I suppose when the Britishers came to know that Hindu and Muslim working together can be a threat for them is the revolt of 1857. Hindus and Muslims throughout the country, they worked together.
Right.
And that is where it is said in the history books that it shook the foundation of the East India Company establishment and everything.
Yeah.
So I suppose that is when they realized that perhaps they could act as a catalyst and, just separate of the two countries, it would be better off.
Yeah.
This pro-imperialist approach ran alongside what the Indians call communalism,
Let's see what happens
seeing
here.
historical events through the prism of religion and focusing on the Hindu-Muslim divide. But the rise in Indian nationalism opposed the imperialist view.
The nationalist histories from the 1920s and 30s have critiqued imperial histories, and they have suggested that the period of British rule is a period of impoverishment, immiserization. It is a period when there was drain of wealth from India. It's a period when industries declined, agriculture declined, peasants, workers, middle classes, landowners, landlords, everyone suffered. Will the nationalists offer us the dark side of British rule and see British rule as something which is to be opposed because it is its impact is so detrimental for the growth and development of India. Instead of developing in India, it underdevelops India. That's the nationalist view.
They initiated the divide and rule policy, which subsequently led to the partitions.
Okay. The British are also blamed for having divided India, not just along religious lines, but also along many other lines. Do you people know that? Who are the groups, which are the groups that they pitted against each other? Is it just the Hindus and the Muslims? the educated Indians against uneducated Indians, the zamindars against peasants, the rich against the poor. I mean, a Hindu zamindar, he's a Hindu, so he's pitted against a Muslim. He's a zamindar, so he's pitted against a Hindu peasant also. So several, horizontal, vertical divisions created.
There was a move in the late 1950s and early 60s amongst historians to rethink the entire syllabus in schools and to argue that history textbooks, the old history textbooks of the colonial period can no longer be taught. We should have new textbooks written which will represent the new ideas of India, which will be part of the remaking of India as a secular, democratic, national nation as such.
Like you said, the elite people have always, dominated over the poor. The condition, like, it's somehow still the same. It's like the bridge between the rich and the poor is still very big in India. And I suppose what true development would be to, merge it to some extent.
This continuing re-examination of British rule isn't only preoccupying Delhi's private elite. 70% of India's population live in the countryside, and many rural children, especially girls, don't go to school. In 1986, Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi tried to redress the balance. His vision was this. It's 5 a.m. and live-in staff are already at work, rousing pupils at this JMV school in Faridabad, an hour's drive from Delhi. It's one of a network of highly selective, rural state boarding schools set up by Gandhi, where for 9 months of each year, pupils live on site, their parents visiting one Saturday in 4. All 500 pupils are provided with free education, textbooks, uniform, food, stationery, and even toothpaste. They're highly competitive. For 80 new places each year, 3,000 children sit an exam. Though they start before dawn, they study into the evening, with teachers on hand to help with homework. The school ethos emphasises self-reliance and hard work above all else. They promote patriotism and a sense of national cohesion.
Best position. India is my country. And all Indians are my brothers and sisters. I love my country. And I am proud of it. I shall always strive to be worthy of it.